Carlos Alcaraz is playing the US Open. 4 months of silence, 4 months of speculation, 4 months of fans refreshing his Instagram for any sign of life, and it just ended with two words nobody was fully ready for. But here's what almost nobody is talking about yet, and it's the part that actually matters. It's not just that he's back. It's the one thing he named, unprompted, the moment he stepped back onto a competition court for the first time in 4 months. A detail so small and so specific that it says more about what this injury actually cost him than any medical update ever could. Because this isn't a routine comeback story. This is a 23-year-old Grand Slam champion quietly revealing what 4 months of silence had really been hiding. So if you want to know exactly what he said, why his own team nearly kept him out of Cincinnati just weeks ago, and why this specific comeback might be the riskiest thing he's ever attempted, stay with me until the end, because the full story is a lot bigger than one Instagram post. To understand why that confession hit so hard, you need to go back to the moment this entire nightmare started, because it didn't begin with a dramatic injury. It began with something so small, almost nobody clocked it as a threat. April 2026, the Barcelona Open. Alcaraz wins his opening match clean. No limp, no wince, no red flag. But somewhere in that match, his right wrist picked up an injury that his own team didn't fully understand the size of yet. He pulled out of his very next event as a precaution. Just a precaution. That's the word everyone used. Nobody in that stadium had any idea they were watching the start of the longest disappearance of Carlos Alcaraz's career. Then the dominoes started falling one after another, faster than anyone expected. Madrid was the first to go. Roland Garros followed, the tournament he'd won as defending champion, watching from home as someone else lifted a trophy that was supposed to be his. Wimbledon disappeared next, the stage that made him a global name. Then Queen's Club. Then the entire hard-court swing through Toronto and Cincinnati, including the exact tournament where 12 months earlier he'd produced one of the most talked-about moments of his career. Every box on the calendar that mattered got crossed out one by one until there was nothing left. So the question is, how does one of the best players alive disappear for 4 months and come back at all? Because while he vanished, the sport did not wait for him. Jannik Sinner kept winning, defending his Wimbledon crown and stacking ranking points Alcaraz could only watch from a training court an ocean away. Alexander Zverev, relentless and hungry, actually passed Alcaraz in the world rankings while the Spaniard was sidelined. Read that again. A player who finished 2025 as world number 1, who won 2 Grand Slams that same year, wasn't even ranked in the top 2 anymore, not injured for a week, not resting for a month. Gone long enough for the entire order of men's tennis to rearrange itself without him. So naturally, the internet did what the internet always does. Is Alcaraz coming back the same player? Is this the quiet start of a decline nobody wants to say out loud? Or is this the calm right before something explosive? Nobody had an answer. And that's exactly the problem, because the one person who could actually answer it wasn't talking. For months, there was almost nothing. No emotional press conference, no tell-all interview breaking down the injury. Just one short line in May, when Alcaraz said his recovery was going well and that he was feeling better, but still wasn't ready to compete. That was it. That was the entire update fans got for weeks. A scattered training clip here, a blurry gym video there, just enough to keep hope alive, never enough to actually know what was happening behind closed doors. And that silence is precisely what turned this from a normal injury story into an obsession. Because everyone had already written the script in their heads. Cincinnati was supposed to be the comeback. It made too much sense not to be. It's the exact court where he beat Sinner in a final that ended after just 23 minutes when Sinner had to retire hurt. The exact moment Alcaraz chose to console his rival instead of celebrating, a scene fans still replay as one of the most human things tennis has produced in years. He was even seen ramping up training specifically in Cincinnati, full practice sessions, full intensity. For a moment, it looked like fate had already written the ending. Then, 1 week before the tournament, his team pulled the plug without warning. No Cincinnati, no defending that title. He forfeited the ranking points outright, widening the gap to Sinner even further, on purpose. On the surface, that looks like a setback. But ask yourself this. Why would a team walk away from the most emotionally perfect comeback stage imaginable, unless they knew something the rest of us didn't. The answer, it turns out, was patience. They were waiting for one target, and one target only: New York. And this week, that target finally arrived. Alcaraz confirmed in a joint announcement alongside reporter Fabrizio Romano that he will play the US Open, the tournament running August 30th through September 13th, the exact major he's defending as champion. 2 words from Alcaraz himself broke 4 months of silence. Here we go. That's it. No lengthy statement, no grand explanation. Just 2 words, after everything. But the announcement wasn't actually the moment fans latched onto. It's what came next. In a short interview, nobody was fully braced for. When Alcaraz stepped onto the practice courts at Flushing Meadows for the first time this year, in front of a packed crowd at Louis Armstrong Stadium, he sat down afterward and said something that wasn't in any comeback script. He didn't talk about the wrist. He didn't talk about the ranking gap, or Sinner, or the pressure of defending a Grand Slam after 4 months away. He talked about missing the ball kids. Sit with that for a second, because that's not a line an athlete's team writes for him. He said that after months away recovering, he missed everything, and when he broke it down, it wasn't the trophies or the wins he named first. It was the crowd. It was the place itself. It was the kids handing him towels between points, a detail so small it's almost embarrassing to admit out loud on camera in front of a stadium of reporters. That's the confession fans didn't see coming. Not a medical update, not a triumphant "I'm back" soundbite. A 23-year-old 7-time Grand Slam champion, quietly telling the world that the last 4 months hadn't just cost him ranking points, they'd cost him the small, ordinary rituals of the sport he'd built his entire identity around. That's what 4 months of silence had actually been hiding. But here's the part that should worry you if you're a fan hoping for a fairy tale. A healed wrist and an emotional quote don't erase what he's actually walking into. Alcaraz has to defend the full 2,000 ranking points available at the US Open, the maximum on the calendar, on top of the 1,000 he already surrendered by skipping Cincinnati. That means if things go wrong in New York, the gap to world number 1 Jannik Sinner, who's been running the tour almost unchallenged in his absence, doesn't just stay wide, it grows. Zverev, who briefly leapfrogged him earlier this year, is right there waiting for any sign of hesitation. And Sinner himself has had his own physical scares this summer, which means the entire top of men's tennis is walking into this tournament with question marks nobody can fully answer. And then there's the question that actually terrifies his team more than any ranking number: match fitness. Alcaraz has trained, he's ramped up intensity, he's even tested the wrist at higher speeds sparring with Holger Rune in Spain. But training isn't competition. Training doesn't have the adrenaline spike, the 5-set grind, the split-second directional change under real pressure that a Grand Slam forces on a body. So here's the question nobody, not his coaches, not the analysts, not even Alcaraz himself, can actually answer right now. What happens the first time that wrist is tested for real, with a Grand Slam title on the line? This isn't even his first shaky return to this exact stadium. Back in 2024, Alcaraz suffered a shock second-round exit at the US Open after a grueling summer of finals left him mentally and physically drained, a result he later admitted rattled him deeply. Flushing Meadows has humbled a fully healthy Alcaraz before. Now stack 4 months of rust and a cautious, interrupted comeback on top of that history, and ask yourself honestly, does that make you more confident or less? So picture it. Middle of a New York night session, deep into a rally, and that same wrist sends a warning sign. Does he grit through it the way we've watched him do before? Or does his team, the same team that just sacrificed an entire Masters 1000 title for caution, pull him out immediately rather than gamble with permanent damage? There's no way to know until it actually happens. And that single unknown is exactly what makes this comeback impossible to look away from. Now zoom out, because this isn't just an Alcaraz story anymore. It rewrites the entire chessboard of men's tennis. Sinner has been operating almost untouchable for months, and part of that dominance has simply come from his biggest threat being unavailable. Now he has to prepare for a hungry, emotionally charged Alcaraz walking back into a Grand Slam draw, the same player who's taken some of the most iconic matches of the last 2 years off him. Zverev has to defend his position against a former world number 1 with something to prove, and the rest of the field, guys like Taylor Fritz, a Djokovic still chasing history, and a wave of hungry younger players all have to reckon with one uncomfortable fact. The man they've quietly benefited from missing is suddenly back in the picture. And don't forget who Alcaraz actually is underneath all of this. This is a player who's openly admitted his emotions get the better of him, who's shown real frustration on court before and later owned it publicly, vowing to be better. That same fire, that same refusal to accept anything less than his best, is exactly what fans are hoping resurfaces in New York. Not recklessness, not a body forced past its limits, just that unmistakable Alcaraz intensity that makes him must-watch whether he's cruising or clawing his way back from a setdown. So here's where this actually leaves us. Carlos Alcaraz has finally revealed what fans spent 4 months waiting to hear. He's playing the US Open, he's defending his title, and in one short, unscripted interview at Flushing Meadows, he showed exactly how much this stage means to him. But that reveal isn't the ending, it's the opening line of the real test. Whether 4 months of quiet, careful, unglamorous rehab actually prepared his body and mind for Grand Slam chaos. Whether he can defend 2,000 points and close a gap that widened every single week he was gone. And whether he can do all of it in front of the exact crowd he just admitted he's been missing every day since April. If this comeback has you as invested as I am, hit that like button right now, because this is about to be one of the defining storylines of the entire tennis season, and you do not want to miss a second of it. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because when Alcaraz steps onto that court in New York, we're covering every match, every reaction, every emotional swing of this comeback as it happens. And drop a comment below right now. Do you think Carlos Alcaraz can defend his US Open title after 4 months away? Or has this layoff changed something in him that we won't actually see until he's out there under the lights? I want to know what you think, because this is exactly the debate that makes tennis fandom this good. The wait is over. The silence has finally broken. And in just a matter of days, we find out whether Carlos Alcaraz still has what it takes to remind the entire world why he's a Grand Slam champion in the first place. Stay tuned, because this story is only just getting started.